How you guys doing today? Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today is something I'm very excited about. What we did was our panel of experts. So today it's going to be Russ Hamilton, Greg Piper, William Young, all went out and did a story that we are going to share today. And we're going to kind of introduce the story by the person who hand-delivered it, which would be our expert. And then we're going to discuss the story. So each one of us has a story that we are going to introduce today. And they vary. Some is COVID. Some is about retirement. Some is about, does the agency really have our back? Just different stories. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I'm hoping to make this a regular thing. So if you guys are interested and you have just a smartphone, you guys can go and interview somebody, make it between 10 to 15 minutes. And then maybe we could showcase your video on Tier Talk, which I think is great. Just a great way to share a voice. And, again, we have a venue, so why not get people's voices out there? Maybe there's someone you want to recognize. Or maybe there's someone who has a great story to tell. Let's share it because you never know who can learn from it. That's the key. Even though we have fun making these stories are informative, and that's the key. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our sponsor. We come back. I'm going to introduce you to our people, our experts today, and then we're going to go ahead and share their stories, starting with William. Then we're going to go with Greg, and then we're going to go with Russ, and then we'll do myself. I'll save mine for last because I want to get everybody else's story out first because I know sometimes people don't make it to the end of these videos. So at least my people get their stories out first. It's the least I can do for all the hard work that they did. So, all right, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talk to you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. We come back. We're going to share stories.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. And we're back. Now, guys, real quick, if you have a story you want to share, or if by chance, you want to maybe be interviewed by one of us for a future story, that would be great. Here's our email. Mine's gangianthony@yahoo.com. That's gangianthony@yahoo.com. Will, you have your email real quick?
Yeah, it's just corrections, JUSTCORRECTIONS @gmail.com.
All right, Greg, you have an email?
Sure. Folks can reach me at greg@guardianrfid.com, GUARDIANRFID.com, or support@guardianrfid.com. Either one works.
All right. And Russ, you have an email, Russ?
Yes. My business email is, this is a little bit hard to follow, but it's Custos Lupi, which is CUSTOSLUPI @gmail.com, and in Latin that means keeper of wolves.
Why did I know Russ would have the most complicated email out of everybody?
Hey,
honestly, I thought he'd have an AOL account still.
Hey, you guys want to hear something funny real quick before we start our stories? So I was at Target today, wearing the face mask and everything, and one of the people walked up and he said, hey, I see you're shopping for your daughter. And I said, yes, I'm looking for toys to keep them busy. I was like, it's tough times right now. And of course, he's like, oh, so you got yourself a nice N95 mask. And I said, yeah, I am an essential employee, so I don't want to give anything out to anybody. I do interact, unfortunately, during these times. And he's like, oh, what do you do? So I said, I work in corrections. So he goes, oh, so have you told murderers no? I said, hell yeah. And it goes, over what? I was like, well, this is where the story gets weak. Probably over sheets. Maybe they want some extra sheets or whatever it is. But, that's where the story gets a little weak. All right, so what we're going to do, guys, is, and guys, as I said, I hope this really takes off. I really actually had a lot of fun doing this. I would like to do this again within 2 weeks. But again, if you guys have some stories you want to send or you want us to interview you, I gave you the emails of these panel next week or the week after. We'll probably have Connie back on, maybe Lou Soto. A couple people will be sharing their stories. So it could even be a vlog. Doesn't matter. A voice is a voice. So I'm going to go ahead and have William Young introduce himself. He also has got a show he's working on Facebook Live, and then he will go ahead and introduce us to his story.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm William Young. I've been a correctional officer for going on 16 years now, and I'm the author of When Home Becomes a Housing Unit, a book that is about the emotional damage that the job can do to our personal lives. And I interviewed a guy that reached out to me a few months ago, and it just so happened that he became sick with COVID-19. But prior to that, we had several good conversations about mental health and wellness in corrections, and he's kind of a guy after my own heart. So his name is Brian Hughes, and here's the interview.
Well, before we go to the interview, what's the show you got on Facebook Live now?
Oh, it's called the Saturday Night Synopsis, and it's on. If you go to Facebook, it's William Young Author. We do it every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, and the focus is I have guests on, and the focus is about the emotional stress and strain that corrections causes and how we can push past that. I have different guests. I had Anthony on last week. Different guests that kind of talk about their area of expertise on that, and hopefully it helps people out.
So if you guys are interested, you can email him to see if you can get on the show. And there's another good thing. Me and Russ know that those great shows could get lost on Facebook. So I've offered William, and I believe he agreed, that once the shows are done, he can go ahead and forward them to me, and I will go ahead and put them on the Tier Talk venue for people to see it. There was great information. Also, William is an expert himself, so it'll be an honor to share that until you develop your own home. But if you want to keep it on my home, I have no problem doing that. I think what you're doing is great. So either way, but I'm willing to hold it.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
All right, guys. So bear with me. I'm going to try to share the screen. Hey, guys, I'm going to ask you guys to mute it on your end.
Okay.
All right. So here we go.
Greeting my fellow correctional officers, my fellow keepers of chaos and native Tirtakians. I'm William Young, correctional officer and author of When Home Becomes a Housing Unit. And joining me today is Lieutenant Brian Hughes, a 24-year veteran of this magnificent profession and COVID-19 survivor. He's here with us today to talk a little bit about his experience and share his story with us. Brian, before we get started, I want to thank you for your sacrifices and for your service to your community, and for you, the work that you're doing for your brothers and sisters behind the wall, and the things that you've shared with me through your writing that we'll talk about in a little bit. It's truly inspirational, man. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, man. It's an honor to have this interview, and I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. How you holding up, man?
Doing good. Doing a lot better.
Good. Good. So my first question, when I meet somebody and when I talk, I like to know what led you to this wonderful world of corrections. What got you into this field?
Oh, well, like I've seen you talk about a lot. Originally, I wanted to be a police officer. So, it was a whole get the foot in the door thing.
Right.
My father's in corrections. My father was a captain. My uncle was a lieutenant. I have cousins that were officers. So it just kind of was the path, and once I got there, I decided not to leave and take the police route. I enjoyed what I was doing. And so that's it. I stayed and made a career out of it.
Yeah, I always joke with people when they ask why I never, and I would tell them the same way. I wanted to be a police officer, but they say, well, why didn't you go? And I always say now, I like people too much to be a cop. So that's why I kind of joke with them a little bit. But what are Thanksgiving dinners like with a whole family of correctional officers? What's that like?
It's interesting. The conversations are different. The language we speak is different.
Sure.
So yeah, we've went out to dinner as a group, and even the waitress would come over and say, you guys work together? I mean, your language is different. You guys talk a different language. So, yeah, it's interesting.
I had so I kind of found the profession through my uncle, and he worked for corrections. I think he did 27 or 28 years before he retired. And he was always a little goofy growing up. And yeah, I remember my parents kind of talking about it a little bit and how him and my aunt behaved and stuff like that. And I didn't understand until after I was in corrections
now you get
why he behaved the way he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have such a profound respect for that guy. And it makes sense. I mean, the way he, protected his kids, and we always felt like it was overbearing. I mean, just everything. So please extend my gratitude to your family that is in the service as well, man. That's amazing. And for you being second generation, man, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you were sick. The pandemic got you. Is that right?
It got me. It got me pretty early in the fallout when it hit us. So originally, I went off work for 2 weeks. They quarantined me at my home. They told me I had to be at least 3 days fever-free, unmedicated to go back to work. So that second week, I still had a cough, but I beat the fever. And so I went back to the doctor, and they said, nope, CDC changed things. Now you have to be a week symptom-free. So they put me off a third week. So I was off 3 weeks. I've been back 2 weeks, and I still have the cough. I'm still fighting the cough, but everything else is good. The fever was the worst. That knocked me out about a week and a half. I was down fighting a fever, about 103. So
wow,
body aches, and yeah, it was a rough ride, man.
So when you were at home, did you quarantine? Were you away from your family, or did you still intermingle? Or
I mean, we intermingled a little bit, but we didn't. We weren't touching on each other, but yeah, I tried to stay to myself as much as I could.
As being a correctional officer, sometimes we always, well, at least me, I'll just say me, I forecast the worst possible scenario, the outcome, what is going on, what's going to happen. Where was your mind at during this whole thing? Did you think this is no problem, I'm going to kick this thing, or were you worried?
I mean, I knew I was going to kick it, but I would be lying if I didn't say a couple of times I got nervous. I quit watching the news because all you hear is death and destruction. And so, yeah, when you're at your worst, when your temperature is 103, you can't get it down, your body's hurting. Yeah, you're like, man, this might be it. Maybe I ain't going to make it out of this. But yeah, you got to get away from that thinking. So
prior to getting sick, when you were at your facility and they were, we all knew this was going on. What did it do for your mindset? Were you just like, oh, this is just another thing that we got to worry about, or was it different for you?
Nah, when it first started, I thought everybody was overreacting. Thought the government was overreacting. I thought it was just silly, and then things got real quick.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are still sick at my facility. We've had over 26, I think, prisoner deaths. Over 60 officers have been sick. We still have some that are not back to work, so it's real. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine, man. So you were off for a total of almost a month.
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks. 3 weeks. We had a conversation not too long ago about this, and you were talking about, this is kind of on the eve of you going back to work, and you had talked about you felt a little guilt about being home. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I'm a supervisor, and so I feel like I need to lead my team. That's what I'm there for. And so to not be there and knowing what they're walking into every day, I felt horrible. I felt really bad for not being there with my crew. I just felt like I should have been there. And I know it wouldn't have done me any good to get everybody sick, but it's that family thing. I should have been there with my team. They're facing it every day. So yeah, I felt guilty for not being there. Absolutely.
Right. Was there anything that you found helped alleviate some of that, or took some stress off of you when you were at home trying to fight this, or was it a constant, I got to hurry up and get back, I got to beat this thing and get going? I mean, what was going through your mind, man?
I mean, of course I wanted to get back, but like I said, I knew just getting there too soon and making more people sick didn't make any sense. I had a lot of my officers text me, email me, check on me, so that helped, because I let them know that I'd much rather be there with them. Because I did feel guilty. Yeah, it sucked. But just them checking on me and let me, reassuring me that they understand, was that helped me a lot.
So you're back at, so you were off for a little bit and you're getting ready to go back at work. Did you find that your mentality was a little different that first day, putting on your boots again after that break versus coming in before? Or where were you at driving to work that first shift back?
Oh, first shift back, I was a little apprehensive because I was just sick for 3 weeks and I'm walking right back into it. But on the flip side, I'm glad to be back because my staff has been walking into it. So it was mixed feelings, but I was glad to be back. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think people understand that. It's funny when I'm watching all of these commercials for these essential workers, and these people are holding up the signs that say, thank you, grocery store workers, and thank you, nurses and doctors. I've yet to see one that says, thank you, correctional officers. But there's a whole group of people that are going in and out of this war zone every day, and so I kind of laugh because, I was at the gas station the other day on the way to work, and I saw a couple of vans for leaf gutter or gutter cleaning services, and I'm like, oh, look,
right.
Leaf gutter guys are essential today, But I kind of got a little pissed a little bit because I'm like, look at these people are just kind of playing, right? They have the ability to stay home if they want. If things get too bad or too crazy, they can stay home, but I can't. No matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets, guys like you and I still have to go to work. Right.
Yeah, I know some construction folks here, and they found loopholes for if they want to work, they found a reason why they could, or they didn't have to. Right. Yeah. But we're in there every day with sick people, and we have to around them.
Right. And no training. I mean, here's the thing. We are our mission is to keep the population inside and keep them as safe as we can while they're there. And every day something else is thrown on our plate that we have to adjust. And now we're dealing with something that nobody in our time has ever dealt with.
Right.
And they're saying, okay, by the way, now you have to become an expert in infectious disease. You have to know how to protect yourself from not only getting assaulted, but also catching this potentially deadly virus.
Well, absolutely. So when staff started getting sick, of course, the prisoners knew they were going to start getting sick. And so I know in our facilities in this state, tensions were really high. We've had a lot of violence in prisons that normally didn't have violence. Tensions are very high. Originally, when this happened, staff wanted to wear masks, and we were told not to, that it would scare and intimidate the prisoners. And then so when people started getting sick and they realized how serious this was, of course, now it's mandatory to wear a mask.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that. I read a couple of articles about prisons that were not allowing their, and I thought, so immediately when I hear that, I think of, the biggest, guy I've ever seen, and he's got his face tattooed all up, and he's this big, and I'm like, me wearing a mask is not intimidating this dude. I mean, it's just not happening. So obviously somebody who's saying that is so disconnected that it's
right.
It's
right. I would never compare this situation to like 9/11, but it reminds me of when 9/11 happened. Those people originally were told to stay where they're at. Don't leave your office. Don't leave your desk. Stay where you're at.
Right.
How many people would have survived if they would have got the hell out of there sooner?
Right. Right.
If we could have had masks sooner, how many people wouldn't be dead or sick right now?
Yeah, and that's the big frustration for officers, because again, we are like the weathermen of law enforcement. We say, hey, if we don't do X, Y, Z, then this is going to happen. Well, usually none of that happens, but we're trying to tell people, hey, look, you have to do this. If you don't do this, this guy's going to do this. And it becomes very frustrating for us. So I guess my big struggle, and I agree with you, is to talk to staff and say, hey, look, at least we're doing it now. All we can do is take the precautions and the policies that we have in place right now and keep ourselves as safe as we can. Because we all deal with hepatitis, we all deal with AIDS, we all deal with influenza. And so, you know, but you're right. Temperatures are high. People are pissed. But it's kind of funny because I don't know how it's been at your place, but at my place, people have been coming to work. I really thought the opposite would happen. I thought that people would disappear, but people are coming to work every day.
If they're not sick, they're there.
Yeah.
So because we've lost a lot of sick, so the people that are coming to work are working a lot. And
well,
so it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's just a testament to, you know, coming out of this thing, when we're all done, I hope that we all have a better respect for each other, because we're all every facility has those officers that people, you know, say, oh, these guys don't really pull their weight, or these guys are that. But at least in my experience, those people are coming to work. They're doing the things that they're supposed to do right now, which, you know, moving forward, I have a newfound respect for everybody. I mean, I wish that I could, I don't know. I wish I could give everybody a medal for this thing, man, because we're correctional officers all over the United States are kicking ass right now.
Absolutely. And sure, we all slacked at some point, but I tell you, when shit hits the fan, we show up.
Right.
And then staff has been amazing. Yeah. Couldn't appreciate them anymore. Definitely new respect for everybody.
Right. And that's, you know, we talked about this. I talked about this the other night with Anthony, is that people don't understand that bond, that I don't know you. We're not drinking buddies. We don't go to each other's kids' birthday parties.
Right.
If you're in trouble, I'm coming to help you.
Right.
You know, and that you can only find that in corrections.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I was just talking to our warden the other day. We are like the first institution in this state to just really get obliterated with this virus. And so, yeah, we didn't know what to do, what not to do. So we're hoping as this spreads through the state that they can learn to do things that we didn't do, or things we did do that did work. And hopefully we learn a lot from this.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure we'll be getting a ton of policy updates at the end of this thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That changes every day.
Yeah. Hey, we originally met through writing, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
You got a hold of me, and you are you're a writer as well.
Yeah. I dabble a little. Yeah.
No, you do more than dabble. You let me say this, and I'm going to post a link up to this guy's writing. He is of the same mindset as me, only he's probably a lot smarter than me, actually. But the way he writes, his passion is similar to my passion. It's employee wellness. It's getting his brothers and sisters this information and through this thing, so everybody can be better. Brian, I've read the things that you've shared with me, the writing, which I appreciate, and you aspire to write a book as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm working on that now. I don't know if it's a self-help or more of a memoir, but I'm sharing a lot of my experiences and how that has affected my attitude and changed me through the years. And so, yeah, definitely.
You know, it's so important for guys like you to do that kind of thing, because in the correctional industry, we are we just don't go for bullshit. And so if a doctor stands up in front of us, if this is a training prescribed by our administrator, we don't want to hear that. But if a guy like you, who's in the fight, goes and says, "Hey guys, this profession has some adverse effects on us, and it's messed with me a little bit, and it's messed with some guys that I know a little bit. Let's talk about this, because we can pull out of this. We don't have to be argumentative assholes all the time.
Right.
And I just think that work that you're doing, man, it's so important, and it's so needed in this profession because nobody's paying attention to us.
Right. No, I appreciate that. What got me started was I'm tired of burying friends. I'm tired of burying corrections officers that kill themselves, and it's always people we never expected. It's a pretty alarming rate in this state, the way staff are killing themselves. So we even had a murder-suicide of a couple last year. So, yeah, I'm real passionate about getting the word out, awareness, and staff asking for help. And it's hard to change the mentality that we've had over the years, but we got to start. We got to get things changed.
One person at a time, man. It's all with this information. It's all about planting a seed, because we're professional, tough guys and girls, man. We don't want to hear that shit. And so you have to, and you're doing the best thing, man. I've read your stuff, and it's. Let me give you an example of my life, and then we talk about it. And some people may say, "Oh, Lieutenant's crazy," blah blah blah. But in 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, there's going to be a situation where that person says, "Damn, that's exactly what he was talking about, and I should listen to that."
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that book coming out. And if you need anything, you need somebody to read it, you need anything, you let me know, and I'll help you however I can. And I look forward to talking with you again, and to having you on. Maybe we can get you on Tier Talk for a longer interview with me, you, and Anthony. But no, I really appreciate it, man. Make sure you pass on my respect and my greetings to your brothers and sisters at your facility, and let them know that we're pulling for them here and that we're thinking about them. And then, do you have any closing thoughts? Do you have anything that you'd like to say to people watching, people that are going through this pandemic, people that are struggling right now? Let them know. Let them know what advice you got.
Man, it's just a tough situation for everybody. You got to take it serious, but I understand people are getting tired of being locked down in their homes. They just lightened up a couple things here, but take care of yourselves. You got to stay healthy, because you can't run it without us. So you got to stay healthy. Take care of yourselves. That's the biggest thing. Don't ignore symptoms. If you're having some symptoms, get a hold of the doctor, which we're usually not good at either. I don't ever go to the doctor.
Right.
But this made me get there. So yeah, you just got to take care of yourselves. But I appreciate you talking to me, having me on, and I want to get this book done. I want to get awareness out there. I want to start a YouTube channel pretty soon to talk about some issues. So yeah, I got big plans. I don't know how I'm going to do it all, but I got plans.
I'll tell you what, brother. It's just one page at a time, one video at a time, and you have information, you have stories to tell, man. So if you can stand in the middle of a day room or a middle of a yard and say, "Hey, guys, listen to me," and they're not, some of them are receptive, some of them don't care. You can do the same thing with correctional officers, man. It's the same thing. Just stand up there and start talking. Some people listen, some people won't. Who cares, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, man. If you need anything, you let us know. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and take care of yourself, man. Enjoy your weekend.
All right, brother. Be safe.
All right, take care.
Okay, so there was a couple of things that stood out for me. I know you got to leave in about 15 minutes, but I thought that was unique. Maybe I can pose the first question for discussion, is how, even though he's battling for survival, he feels guilty about being sick because he couldn't be with his troops. And I found that to be amazing.
Yeah, when he texted me that the other day, I texted him just to check in with him, and he was getting ready to go back to work, and he was super anxious about wanting to get back to work. He said the entire time he was more concerned with his brothers and sisters at the facility than with his own well-being at home. And I've talked to other officers that have been through like riot situations that were off that day or that had been on vacation, and they have this overwhelming sense of guilt that they weren't there with their brothers and sisters. And I just thought that was incredible that this guy is fighting, this potentially deadly virus, and all he wants to do is get back to the line and help his troops. I mean, I just thought it was great.
Yeah, I thought that's something that needed to stand out within the story that you told. And I believe Greg may have had a question, because I know he text was curious about the facility he was from. Where did he come from? Nebraska?
No, he's in Michigan.
Michigan.
Mhm.
Greg, is there any follow-up to that interview at all? Any questions?
Well, I just found it really fascinating as listening to him, having never met this guy before, having never met you personally before. I could absolutely relate to the way he was talking, his mannerisms, the things he said, the family connection he had, because we get into corrections one of two ways. One of three, excuse me. It's either a family connection, we wanted to get into law enforcement, or we just needed a job.
Right.
And he absolutely fell into that he with the law enforcement and the family connection. But it was very interesting that his passion strikes me as a very common theme. The one that my favorite part of the interview, which you did a great job leading him through to let him get his feelings out, was just talking about how, and I believe you were the one who said it, I don't go drinking beer with you. I don't hang out at your kids' birthday parties, but I got your six anytime we need it.
Right.
So, and because it is a family thing, and you could tell there was a connection, even though the two of you had met before, there was definitely a connection.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
What-
Sorry,
what-
Anthony.
No, I was going to say, I like that Greg hit that moment where behind that wall, we all have each other's back, regardless of what our personal lives are. And that was definitely something worth noting as well. But did you feel that this interview is also needed because you have a survivor of COVID? So there's a layer of hope here for those that are, losing it.
I just wanted to comment, we got a lot of officers out there working that know that they're going to be picking this up potentially. And there's a lot of horror stories out there. I mean, I know those are real and whatnot, but it's nice to see someone that gives you that roadmap because, there's a good chance you're going to make it back and you're going to be okay. And it's just nice to see some of those people that endured and persevered through.
Yeah, and that was very powerful to have someone that, again, survived it because, again, these are stories that we want to tell as opposed to the other side where, people are losing the battle. Now you have someone that won the battle but also had a reason to win the battle. I mean, this guy's a fighter right from the get-go. But anything in closing about your interview? I know you have to go and do your show.
No, I just appreciate the opportunity and yeah, he, like Greg said, I had about a 45-minute phone conversation with the guy when we first met, and he's just a super passionate guy. He's a credit to the profession. I can't say enough good things about this guy. And like you said, it's with all of you guys that I've met over this venue. We don't have to know each other. All that matters is that we represent the same thing. We wear the same uniform, and we would lay down our lives for the guy or gal next to us. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Well, it's cool about this, Will, before you go, you just had someone's story told, and it's going to probably get to people who wouldn't normally have heard his story. So, that's just a great deed in itself and a story definitely worth telling. So thank you for bringing him on. If you get to talk to him again, thank you. Tell him that Tier Talk says thank you. And I think Greg's got a question.
Yeah, just one more thing. Can you model that absolutely gorgeous sweatshirt you're wearing? That is gorgeous. Wherever did you get that?
Guardian RFID, we did a little video for them, and I love hoodies, and usually black ones though. But
Noted.
But no, they sent me this in the mail, and it was totally unexpected. I didn't even know it was coming, and it's great. It fits good. I'm a bigger guy, and it's just, it's an awesome hoodie, and I mean that's what we are. We're warriors, right? It's perfect.
Absolutely. Well, yours fits a lot better than Russ's.
Mine's strong.
Hey, it would be a good. Maybe I'll talk to Ken one day, and I'll ask Ken for those that maybe tell a story. Maybe he'd be willing to get them to wear a Warrior sweatshirt. Doesn't hurt.
I'm sure we can come up with T-shirts. I have a slogan that we're really pushing lately, and it's "Get your team home safe." That's my slogan. That's my call, and that's the kind of the Guardian RFID way with the Warrior and the thin gray line. So I think that we could probably get at least some T-shirts, if not some hats or hoodies.
Oh, he wants one. So that's a good motivator for people to submit a story. Hey, Will, thanks for coming on. I know you got to go. Don't forget, send me the video when you're done, and I'll post it up tomorrow. And good luck on your interview today.
I will. Thanks a lot, guys. You guys take care.
Take care, brother.
See ya.
All right, guys. So I thought that was a great interview, right?
Oh, absolutely. Loved it.
Yeah, first time doing it, so I'm excited. So I thought we could do now is go to Greg Piper's video. Now, the only thing is me and Greg worked hard to try to get a good download on this. I think from this point on, he's going to use Zoom. But we did have a little trouble with the video content, but it's so valuable that we're going to use it. So it's going to come out a bit choppy. But the key here is just, as if it's a podcast, just listen to the audio. There's a story coming out of DeSoto, Mississippi. It's a great story. I'll have Greg introduce it. Again, forgive us for the quality of the video, but I promise you this, the quality of the story is unmatched.
Well, I appreciate that. I had the opportunity to interview Chad Wicker and Jeff Jackson. Chad is the director of adult and juvenile corrections in DeSoto County, Mississippi. Jeff is his captain and operations manager, or liaison, if you will, on the adult side. I've known Jeff and Chad for probably 3 years. I had the opportunity to do a training at their facility, and just have Jeff is a great guy. You'll notice some similarities between Jeff and I. There have been people who have called Jeff Greg 2.0. So we do have some similarities. You may not come through on the video, but just some great people. DeSoto County, Mississippi, for those of you who don't know, is just south of Memphis, Tennessee. So they take in a lot of the Memphis-type offenders because it's just south. It's a better run county, but that's where guys go to take things from other people. So they do have about a 400-bed facility, and just really impressed by what I heard from Chad and Jeff during this interview, what they've been doing, and just kind of the story of how Jeff has decided to come home, if you will, during this interview.
And part of this does touch on the coronavirus, correct?
Yeah, we do touch on what they've done at their facility, specifically in a what I would call level 3 or level 4 facility. Like I said, 400-bed facility, and then just a little bit at the end there, we touch on Jeff and his story.
Okay, guys, again, just forgive us with the video. It's going to be a bit choppy, but the audio is there, and a lot of good information coming from these two gentlemen. Plus, there was a good interviewer there. I believe his name was Greg Piper. Very proud. Is this the first interview you've ever done?
No.
Oh, damn! I thought we pioneered something on Tier Talk, but that's why
I've actually led a couple of webinars, and I did a conference call on Sarah Blandact about a year and a half ago. So I'm not super experienced at it. I'm usually the one just does most of the talking. So this give and take is new to me.
No, I thought you were phenomenal. All right, so hold on, guys. I'm going to set this one up too.
Well, I want to thank everybody for watching today. This is Greg Piper. I am sitting in a beautiful little space, quarantined, and today I'm going to be interviewing Chad Wicker and Jeff Jackson, who are the director. And I would say, Jeff, what is your official title at DeSoto County?
Captain is my rank, but we'll go the joke around the office building is operations manager.
Operations manager of the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office in DeSoto County, Mississippi. Chad, tell us a little bit about your facility.
So we are a 568 bed detention facility. We hold all class of inmates from murderers to public drunk. We are about the third largest jail in the state of Mississippi. We average population right now is about 300, but that's about 100 lower than we normally are because of the coronavirus. And the courts and other cities have drastically reduced their intake, so our population is down a little bit. We usually run a census around 400. We process about 13,000 inmates a year, and we have a staff of 72 security staff, and we have a nursing staff of about 12 that facilitates our facility.
So you mentioned that you're down a little bit. So have you had cases in your facility, inmates or staff, of being tested positive?
So we have not had any staff test positive. Or excuse me, we have not had any inmates test positive. We've had one staff member in our juvenile facility, which is a separate facility from our adult facility, test positive. When we traced that back, it looks like she may have received that from her uncle or something, not related to the jail. We do not have any staff members in the adult side test positive, and we do not have any inmates at this time showing symptoms or tested positive. So we're very fortunate in that, but it's a fight every day to keep the virus out of our facility.
So you say it's a fight every day. Obviously, you're very fortunate, but I wouldn't say fortunate. I would say you obviously had a plan in place, and you're doing some specific measures. What are you doing other than your daily cleaning and regiments to ensure that you're going to continue that way? Because that's unheard of to have a facility with 0 positives.
So we were very early on. We were started doing a lot of heavy sanitation in mid-February when this stuff really started breaking out. We started following the CDC guidelines as far as screening inmates for temperature and ask them screening questions early on. And I think that really prevented us from having any cases and getting it into the facility. We immediately cut out all unnecessary visitation, attorney visits, any type of visitors. We closed that down. We stopped our inmate workers from going outside. We had a few inmate workers that picked up trash and so forth. We quit sending them outside. We immediately got a detail together and just sanitate, and we were sanitizing our building weekly with a pressure washer and cleaning, just to prevent those, just to try everything. In my experience, when you have something like this in any type of crisis, you got to do something. You cannot be behind that. You can't just sit and wait for, it to pass you by. You have to be proactive. And I think we're very proactive as a staff. We've had several meetings going back, like I said, mid-February to try to prevent this thing to really get bad because, fortunately we don't have any in our facility, but once you get some in your facility, from what I understand about this virus, I'm not a doctor, but I think it can really, be debilitating for a facility once it gets in there.
So you said that you had meetings. Were you more in the camp of, I'm not going to wait for permission, I'm just going to beg forgiveness? And did you just take steps that you felt were appropriate? Did you have input from the county commissioners or the sheriff, or did you just go ahead and make these decisions knowing that this was the right thing to do?
Well, like I said, we kind of saw this coming, and I want to say, I don't have the exact date, but it was mid-February when this thing really got serious, and we were like, hey, we need to start taking some precautions. I met with the sheriff, and we came up with a game plan, and we started going from there. I brought all my command staff in, and we had a meeting and just came out with a hammered out plan of what we're going to do. So just to give an example of what we're doing. So any new person that comes in our facility, they're screened. If they don't have a temperature, they're not showing any symptoms, then they're placed into a quarantine pod for 14 days. Once they're cleared, and they're checked by the nurse daily in there for a temperature and any signs. After 14 days, they're checked again. If they still don't have any signs or symptoms, then they're placed in the general population. And I think that's prevented the spread of this thing. Like I said, again, we've had nobody test positive. We had, nobody really show symptoms. We also we bought some, because the corona tests are so hard to get a hold of, we bought flu tests. And so a lot of these people who show some symptoms really have the flu. And so if they test positive for flu, that means they don't have coronavirus. So that's another thing we did early on, because the hysteria with this virus, anybody said they had, full body pain or fever or something, or they had the coronavirus. So we were able to just discount that quite a bit. So, again, I think it goes back to just having a good staff, a good group of people working together to accomplish a goal. And that's what it is a lot in just about any profession. You got to trust your people, and you got to have strong leadership and make decisions and take care of business. And that's what we did here.
And to add on to that is just the best part about it is that Cito's always been very proactive in having the proper amount of PPE on hand, plus months in advance. We do one large order every 3 months. We don't let anything get down into the negative to where, hey, we're going to be without this for 2 weeks. We keep at least a 3-month supply of, like gloves and things like that for security staff and the nursing staff.
Well, Jeff, as the operations manager, kind of the captain, so you're more with the staff and with the front line, you get a little more access to the staff. What have you done, either specifically or in general, to continue to keep the morale high? Because that's been the overriding issue we've had as we've interviewed other facilities across the country. We've had staff assaults are up, staff morale is down. What are you doing? Do you have some specifics or some things that you can suggest that you've kept your staff kept going through this?
I would say with me is, you just constantly check on your staff. At the same time, that can be quite annoying for some of the staff if the big brass is constantly walking around the building. But, I can't take credit for it, but we have a pretty big support network with the community from a lot of the local restaurants. that they are providing lunches for first responders, and they're actually including the jail and the correction staff in there. So me and our PR director will actually go up there, pick up the lunches. I'll bring them to the staff, hand deliver them, so they don't have to come out of pocket for them. A lot of worry about money, maybe their spouse is out of work. So anything that us as a department can do to facilitate, a little bit of food, or just anything that we can give to them that they don't have to purchase on their own is really boosting morale. We all know that correction professionals love to eat. So if that's the easiest thing that we can do, and like I said, we can't take credit. It's really our community that's stepping up. We're from Memphis, or just south of Memphis, so I've gotten to eat barbecue twice this week, free of charge. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, we know based on our past experience, Jeff, you're not afraid to eat.
No, I'm not.
I know that. I have put on, as they used to call it, holiday weight. I personally have put on the pandemic weight. Not
the COVID-19. Yeah, I'm on 12 pounds.
Yeah. It's my health scare that I had back in January. I lost it all, and now I've gained it all back. So I want to switch gears just for a minute, though, because one of the things that we find so fascinating about corrections, Jeff, is that people get into corrections for a variety of reasons. And your story of getting into corrections, then out and back in, kind of is very interesting. So can you give me a little backstory on how you got into corrections?
I got into corrections when, I had gotten out of the military and, took a year off, not knowing what I was going to do. And I was miserable. I had lost that purpose. And I actually joined the sheriff's department with the intent of going to the patrol side. Most of our sheriff's departments like for you to work in the jail first. And I was like, wow, it's going to sound cliche, but, after speaking with and training with all of the personnel I work with, I was like, these are my people, and then, after 13 months, tested for sergeant at the lieutenant's request, made it, 9 months later, made lieutenant, and it's really been all uphill from there.
So you were in the jail and you decided to stay, not go to the road.
Hey, I never even tested for it. I knew the jail was exactly where I wanted to be.
So a lot of people, that get into corrections, they realize that we're not in it for the money, and none of us are. If we got into corrections, we're in the wrong business if we think we're going to get rich. But you have the opportunity to leave corrections, to go into the private sector, and to find a new path, if you will. And you did that. Did you enjoy when you left corrections? Did you enjoy that?
I did. I missed the camaraderie, and you can kind of get that week to week traveling to jails. But as you know, you can go to some jails where the morale is just in the tank, and it sucks you down with it. You can show up on a Monday in a great mood, and if you spend a week at a jail that is improperly ran, or they have some toxic leadership, or the officers are just not motivated to be there, it can really suck the life out of you, and that's the bad part about correction. The benefit of going to the private sector and coming back is every day that I've been here, I tell my staff, DeSoto County, we are in the top 1% of jails, prisons, and police departments that I visited while I was in the private sector. You don't know how lucky you have it here. And I give them stories about how bad some jails have it. And it's usually not the jail or their command staff's fault. It might be budgetary issues or whatnot. And I'll let them know that, from the equipment to the training that they receive here to the safety of the facility that they work in, it's all top tier, So I've really been able to boost staff morale that way, letting them know how much the command staff actually cares about them, and we give them everything they need, from PPE to food, to the time off they need if they want to take care of a sick family member. Like I know Guardian's mission statement is, one mission, one team, and I've really tried to bring that back here to DeSoto County.
Well, what was that? Was there always that little voice in your head, or that draw, that pull that sucked you back into corrections? Because people talk about, I got to get out of this place. It's killing me. But we find ourselves, once we're in it, we don't want to leave. I mean, that I've been out of it for 3.5 years, and yet I can't wait to get back into the facility.
Absolutely.
What is it that drew you back and draws us back?
Well, there was a unique story when the job was offered to me, not to get all religious or whatnot, but I did some praying, and my old protege, who I hadn't talked to in 5 months, called me that night. 20 minutes after I got done praying about it, was saying and told me, you were right the whole time. I now understand why you were upset when the officers weren't doing what you asked and whatnot. And then, I was flying home the next day, And a military chaplain in an airport in Oklahoma City sat down next to me, saw me, and was like, "What's wrong?" You know, and he goes, "I can tell you were a prior service member, but you know, by the way you carry yourself, the stickers on your backpack, things like that." And I just kind of let loose. He was like, "Well, you were an NCO, non-commissioned officer in the Army." He was like, "And now you don't have anyone in your flock. You're not in charge of anybody, and there's always going to be that voice inside your head to lead people." And that's what it was. So when the opportunity came to lead this jail, you know, let Director Wicker take a step back and be the administrator of both the adult and the juvenile side, I just couldn't say no to that opportunity.
So the opportunity to lead others.
To lead others, absolutely.
And now what about, go ahead.
I was going to say, because I know in my heart that I can do a good job, and I know I'm going to give the officers the best that I can do, and they don't deserve anything less than that.
Chad, does leading always have to mean promotion?
No, it does not. I mean, people lead their families every day. But I think being a leader is doing what you think is the right thing to do, no matter if it's leading your family or leading a group of correctional professionals. It's just doing the right thing and come to work every day, pull your boots up and go to work. That's what a leader is, and people respect that.
Well, I really appreciate the leadership that you two have shown down there in Mississippi. I know you guys have had some tough times, from weather to the Rona to budgetary issues, just in general. And we want to thank you here at Tier Talk and Guardian RFID for the hard work you guys have done. We appreciate your time. And is there any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to leave our audience with?
I know corrections can be the unspoken or unseen form or the arm of the law enforcement. I don't want people to get down, because people they see the cops running around, they see the frontline healthcare workers with their masks on at the hospital and doctors' offices, and I know us as corrections professionals don't get the recognition that we need, but I can promise you that the community is starting to see that. We just have to be more vocal on social media and whatnot. Encourage your sheriff's department to include the jail and functions and whatnot like that, because we're a necessity, and I believe just sometimes you don't get the recognition you deserve, but that's where being just a quiet professional is going to come in handy. Know that you are appreciated by your command staff and by your family members, and it's just going to be unseen by the community, but know that you're appreciated.
Yeah, and I think just I was listening to an interview the other day, and one of the guys said, "Calm leads calm," and times like this. So
Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah, Dan Crenshaw. And so when this crisis is going on, it will pass. We'll get through this, and I think you just got to have a good team, and people, other correctional agencies out there know that this will pass, and we'll get through this. I know a lot of cities are having a tough time with the coronavirus, and I know there's some people in Arkansas I've talked to that's having a tough time. So, just think of those people, and we'll get through this as a profession.
Well, I appreciate that, because we are one family. Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and you have a wonderful time. We'll hope to talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Greg.
That was a great interview. Now, that was great, and I'm hoping that we can have those gentlemen on. I would love to talk to them, just have an interview, see what's going on at DeSoto County. I thought it's great how they're able to keep their facility coronavirus free. It looks like you have people that are preventing, and that's the key here. The key is prevention. But there was one question I actually thought that you asked that was a great question. I texted you before, and I think it's something that I think me, Russ, and you should explore a little bit. But you asked them a question about, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, forgive me, but about being a leader doesn't always require a promotion. I'm kind of paraphrasing it. But what did you mean by that question, Greg?
Well, we often think that our leaders have to be the lieutenants, the captains, the major, the warden. We always think, well, those are the leaders within our jails and our prisons. And I think Chad absolutely nailed on the head when I mentioned, and you didn't paraphrase, that's exactly what I said. You have to be, does promotion mean leadership? And he said people lead their families every day. There are single parents all over the country that go to work and lead their families, and they didn't get promoted into that role. They got thrust into that role. You can be a leader if you work in food service. You can be a leader if you're the clinic officer. You can be a leader if you work in the yard. It doesn't matter whether you have railroad tracks or a rank. You just go out and set the example, and that's being a leader.
Yeah, I thought that question made a statement, right, Russ?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, when these guys started getting into that and they started talking about all the same things that I talk about in corrections day in and day out, they hit all those main points that I always get into, you know, being a forward visionary, thinking outside the box, like they were talking about. Well, maybe we can't prove it's corona, but if we can prove it's something else, maybe this guy doesn't have it. And then going from that to, you know, prevent, preempt, and just doing all those other things that you should be doing as an officer, and seeing, you know, how they take it to heart, and they're really out there. They're looking at the horizon, and they're trying to see, you know, not just the threats that are coming that are far in the distance, but also the solutions that they can take to take those threats out of the way as they come. And I applaud those guys, because those guys are the kind of thinkers that I want to work with every time I donned that uniform. And sometimes in some situations, there's precious few of them out there. And you're absolutely right. Chain of command and leadership can often be two very different things.
Yeah, and I want to add something too. Again, I know we just touched on it, but that preparation is key, or that prevention is key. I think a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, it hasn't affected us yet, so there's no need to do anything. But then you have facilities like this that says, you know what, I'm not going to wait for it to come. You know, we're in corrections. We're defined by universal precaution, and I wish more people were taking that as seriously as they are in DeSoto County. I mean, would you agree, Greg?
Absolutely. I was really impressed, because I had actually just a day or two before, I've been doing some research. I am, as many of you know, and I didn't introduce myself for those who are new to Tier Talk, my job is I'm the director of training for Guardian RFID. So I travel. I was on the road about 42 weeks last year, maybe 43, traveling across the country, visiting with jails and training and implementing systems. And I obviously have not traveled since the 1st of March. I actually missed about a month in January and February. I had a severe medical condition, so I was out for a month. I had 1 week of travel, and then I was, since the 1st of March, I've been on the bench. And so I know that it's coming again, that I'm going to be traveling again soon. So I was doing some research, long story short, on Arkansas jails, because that's my next line of going to, and noticing the cases all over Arkansas. For those of you who are not geography majors, Arkansas, Mississippi, it's right there. So that's why Chad mentioned it. But for them to be that close to Memphis, Crittenden County and Jackson County and Grant County, those counties right in there, that they don't have any cases and they're right next to a major metropolis, I was blown away at the preparation and the ability that Chad and his team and Jeff have put forth to avoid having any of those cases.
See, I wish more of that would come out there, because everybody's talking about the prison system and jail systems being failures, but they're not talking about the successes. You know why? Because everybody wants to look to get those inmates out. So what do? They bastardize the system. But now you have a system here where it's probably safer to keep the inmates in, and why ain't they promoting that? That shows due diligence, hard work, and effort. But again, it's because it goes against the political agenda of freeing all the inmates. But I thought that was a great story, and I can't wait to see what you have in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward. You definitely have a nice, definitely got to have a lot of contacts, and especially what you do. So I'm sure you can get a very good, rich, diverse interviews, that could be submitted here. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have next.
Well, I was going to interview Russ next time. No, I'm kidding.
Go ahead. Russ loves being interviewed. Russ has a lot to say. Now, the next two topics, we broke away from the coronavirus. The next two topics I think are going to hit home with those that work in corrections, because these are questions that really aren't asked, even though we feel it. We just may not have thought to ask it. We'll have Russ do his first, then we'll have mine come up next. But I thought this dialogue was actually very unique, because it's not something we've ever really discussed on Tier Talk. But definitely after I discussed it, after Russ did, I was able to see Russ's interview or Russ's vlog. And after I did my interview, I'm thinking like, man, how did we never discuss these topics before? Because they're powerful. But go ahead, Russ, interview introduce your topic.
Okay, so while I was, trying to figure out where the marble in my head was going to land and try and find a topic for this, I thought, well, something that probably doesn't really get mentioned is the difference between being a civilian victim of a violent crime and being the victim of a violent crime as a correctional officer. And so since I've been in that position multiple times on both sides, especially in one incident that happened to me about 2 years ago during a robbery at a Lowe's, I thought I would just, explore that and talk about what the differences were from my vantage point, what I observed.
Well, be advised, I'm using my daughter's headset right now. I saw some people laughing, but do not let these headsets take you off the seriousness of the topic that Russ is about ready to give, because when it was all said and done, Russ gives this powerful monologue at the very end of his vlog, and I'm going to put it into like a vignette so you can actually know exactly when it's really hits home. But once it's done, I'll ask it again. But there was something that Russ really hit on that really hit deep with me, and I'm actually really excited to show this. I can't wait to get people's thoughts, including Greg, because remember, this is the first time Greg's seeing this. So, okay, guys, just stand by. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again.
Hey there, Tier Talk fans. Russ Hamilton here from Keepers of Chaos. Anyway, going to do a quick video here. This is going to be one of a compilation I believe that Anthony Gangi is going to do. And I had to pick out a subject to fill, so I thought I'd pick out something a little bit different, a little bit unique. This particular video is going to be about the difference between being a victim, as in being victimized and or attacked while you're on the job, on duty, and the difference that there is when you might be the victim of a crime just as a regular civilian out there on the street. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's get to it. So basically, the way I'm going to start this thing is I'm going to regale you with 3 different stories of things that happened personally to me. And so I'm going to start with the very first one. I used to have this gig that I worked in the late afternoon or late morning, really early afternoon on the West Block yard. And overhead, I had actually, a guy with lethal force up there, model H&K model 94. So that was all good and was really super active yard, all kinds of things, having a very dense population on there. I mean, it was always crowded, 200-300 guys at a time, but a very small yard. So anyway, this one particular day, I was, out by the back where the fence is, and I was just kind of, standing there, had an inmate maybe about, 7-8 feet in front of me. He was kind of talking to me, a little bit of chit chat back and forth. And I noticed another inmate start to come up on my side, and I thought he was coming up to ask me a question. And so as I started to turn toward him, he just basically sucker punched me, and he caught me right, dead square in the eye. And it ended up, scratching and tearing my cornea a little bit, which is bad because when you start off a fight and you only have half your vision, it's really bad. But I managed to trap his arm underneath mine as he came around, and I managed to, kind of hook him one way, and then came back and ended up clotheslining him, ended up on the ground. Guess what? My overhead was nowhere to be seen. He was off wandering down the inside of the chair on the other side. And so I had, nothing I could do. No one knew I was out there. Managed to get my whistle, start blowing at it. Fortunately, the guy, he was kind of out of it. At that time, no other inmates jumped in, so good on my part. Anyway, kind of fast forward a little bit. Didn't really think anything more of it until about 6 months later when someone, administrator came up to me and said, "Oh, by the way, they're not going to prosecute that." I was like, "What?" And he went back, "Oh, yeah, that." I thought, well, they were going to prosecute it. I never knew that they might, but they didn't. The Marin County District Attorney just wasn't interested in it, even though it was clearly, self-defense, my use of force and stuff. Clearly, he was the aggressor. I'd never had any other interactions with this inmate before. Yet they decided that they simply weren't going to do anything about it. And that was the first and last time I ever heard anything about that. Story number 2. All right. This happened once again to me inside a segregation unit. And I had an inmate. He was handcuffed. Don't remember exactly now. I was taking him back and forth or something, either from an interview or from a shower to a shower. Anyway, I ended up putting him back in his cell. And for whatever reason, as I was trying to get his handcuffs off, as he was inside and trying to, put his hands out, and I got one cuff off, he spun around and caught my left hand and started dragging me, into the food port. So at that point there, I had to, make a really quick snap decision. I decided I was just going to try and, and punch him. And so I missed, but I put my arm in there as far as I could, because I knew that would, at least give me a chance to maybe break the hold. It was kind of a risk. And then I managed to, do the thing where I kind of like circled back around and re-grabbed his arm, pulled it out, managed to drag it back out, over the food port. Right then, thankfully, he saved my career, my sergeant, Sergeant Parker. And he says, like, in slow motion, it's like, no. So I didn't end up breaking his arm, but I said, okay, well, let's at least get the bracelets off. So anyway, I held his arm there. We got the bracelets. Ended up with, some nerve damage to my hand. It still doesn't work right to this day. But anyway, time goes on, and, just pretty much nothing happened. Then after about a year of this, they said, oh, guess what? That guy over there, he took the plea deal. Okay. So he ended up doing 3 years for what he did to me. And, that was the first and last I ever heard of it again. Story three goes like this. It's my very last week as a sergeant. I'm in the process of retiring, right? So anyway, we ended up having this big blow up on my yard, and we got like, some guys inside a dorm that are rioting and some that are out, and we've deployed some 40 millimeter, guns along one side of these guys, and we're getting the guys, out of this dorm and putting them on the ground out there. I have one guy, looks like he's trying to hide something up his ass. I pull him up. Anyway, as I start to handcuff him, he pushes back on me, tries to spin around. Anyway, I end up kind of like suplexing him over, end up twisting my ankle. Down on the ground we go. We're wrestling around. A couple other staff responded to get him all restrained. But I sprained my ankle, which really sucks because they already had calculated, all my pay and all my sick time that I had accrued and vacation time. So I had to tough it out the last, I think the last 5 days after that or whatever. And anyway, once again, same old thing, and never heard anything from it ever again, really, except that they said that I think I called someone like 6 months later, and they said, oh, yeah, they weren't going to bother to prosecute. He did get found guilty in an internal disciplinary, lost some time and stuff, and, well, that was it. Story number 4, it goes like this, retired little old me doing my civilian thing, and in the store, I'm down there at Lowe's picking out some stuff, getting ready to, buy some materials, get all my honeydews done. And, anyway, I hear a guy say something and it just doesn't sound quite right to me. Anyway, little hair standing on the back of I just knew something was wrong. So anyway, I abandoned my cart and I go down to the end of the aisle, and this guy is down there trying to rob the place, and he's trying to, grab the register and get out. And so, anyway, the store manager comes up and starts telling, hey, you have to leave the store now. And so I'm looking at the store manager like, what do you want me to do exactly? Cause he kind of knew me a little bit. And so he's just make him go outside. So we kind of flush him outside. And as soon as he gets outside, he starts picking up these big, huge landscaping rocks, and, all of a sudden, he's like crashing these things into cars and trying to throw them at people. And so I'm dialing on my phone, and I have the local PD, and they're on the way, but they still can't tell me ever, how far away are you guys? This is getting really bad. I really thought it was going to hurt someone. And then, he started to go across the road to this little place where there was like a Starbucks and stuff there. It's really bad. Now I'm really concerned that he's going to get in there and start hurting people, but I can't get close to him because he literally has, some massive rocks. And he's hitting cars with them and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So anyway, at that time, he has the last rock and he just manages to hurl it. I was a little bit too close. I catch it right in the leg above the knee. So then I'm just like, well, you know what? I'm already hurt. He doesn't have a rock. So I did my best, but that kind of slowed me down, and I rushed him as fast as I could. But just before I get to him, I managed to pick up a couple other rocks, thinking those aren't going to feel real good upside my head. Right then, the police chief of the little town I'm in, he comes rolling up, and boom, dude hits his car with a rock. The police chief gets out. I circle back behind him. The guy's kind of now in a little bit of a standoff. He starts to reach up once with one rock. The police chief hits him with the taser. No effect. Just ends up that the guy goes back around the street, picks up another rock, and then he's starting to come toward the police chief. The police chief drops the taser, pulls his handgun out, levels it up. The guy says, "Don't do it." And man, I could see everything. I could see his finger starting to, tighten on the trigger and everything. I thought, wow, this is going to go lethal right here, right now. And then you drop the rock. I ended up, ambulance crew came by, checked me out, cool. It's not fine. I'm limping around. Once again, I've managed to get myself hurt a little bit. Not a big deal though. But anyway, I go ahead and I head on home. So about the instant I walk in the door and stuff, my phone rings. Well, what's going on? Well, it's that county's victim services. They're calling me already just a few hours ago, and they're wanting to know how they can help me. And they're telling me about all my recourses against this guy and about how, if it goes to trial, that they'll help me and they'll be there with me and they'll talk me through it, and they'll tell me how afterwards I can go ahead and I can, file a civil complaint against this guy, possibly get some money. Well, you're not going to get money. You're not going to get blood out of a turnip, obviously. But anyway, they're with me through the whole thing. And so, a couple times I called them up, and asked them, if this guy had made bail or anything, and he hadn't. And, they're right there. They're telling me which day all of the court dates are going to happen. And they've sent me this big package of what all of my rights are. And they send me the thing I'm going to need because now he's taken a deal. And, he's supposed to do like 6 years or whatever. And they've gone ahead and sent me the packet to make sure that, that I'm going to be notified when he paroles or whatever. I never bothered to fill that out or anything because it just wasn't, that kind of a thing. And the whole way, I was being treated like royalty. So anyway, I guess that if we're going to get to what the moral of the story is, shame on you legislators out there. Shame on you administrators. Shame on your district attorneys who just think that correctional staff are cannon fodder for inmates. That's not the case. I take that personally. I've been a victim, unfortunately, numerous times of violent crimes. But what I'm saying is, as a professional, when I'm out there, when I'm, being of service to the public, how come you guys can't back me? How come you can't make sure that, hey, everything's okay with me? How come you don't advise me of what my victim rights are? It's time for this to start changing, people. And so that's why I chose this particular subject. That's why I wanted to get this off my chest and just show you people, what the differences are. We need to start demanding more of our legislators. We need to start demanding more of our administrators, more of our elected officials. Just food for thought. And I thought I'd leave you with that. Because even in this day and age, even when civilians are treated fairly well with respect to that, they've kind of not so much done away with that as they just decided to start releasing felons everywhere. And they'll use any excuse. And that just means they're going to make more victims. But still, to a degree, if you're a victim as a civilian, you have way more action than you do as a correctional officer in this day and age. Hey, I'm Russ Hamilton. I want everyone out there to stay frosty, stay awake, stay aware. Don't be complacent. Stay safe, people.
I was getting ready to do Russ running for president 2020. That was what part of that video got to me, and I think that's why I had the vignette come out and the black and white part to basically, where's our respect? But when you said we're not just cannon fodder, what does that mean?
It just means some people just think that, we should just suck it up, and any insult hurled at us, any injury we get, anytime that we have poop, shit, feces, toilet water thrown on us, that we should just suck it up and pretend like, hey, we're all good to go the next day. And I think that's total bullshit. I mean, I think that district attorneys should be jumping on these guys and filing charges. And I think that every time something happens to one of us, we should file civil suit in court, even if it's only small claims court, and get the maximum amounts, and be causing them to, have to not be able to eat chips out of the canteen if that's what it takes.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something. Some of these inmates, they don't care about time, but once you start affecting whatever little they got, and what's funny too with this is that if you, let's say, inmate attacks you, a lot of lawyers are going to jump and want to, be on that inmate's side because they feel that we're going to retaliate against that inmate, and that's where they go for that money. They'll get more representation during a staff assault than we would. How crazy is that? And yet we're the one that's being assaulted. But they know for a fact that once they assault staff, they feel that we're going to jump on them, and those lawyers jump on those lawsuits. Trust and believe, they jump on that. But I think that's a topic that's very worthy of discussion one day. Maybe even do a whole episode on that of, what we need to do after a staff assault. I know that in some cases, sometimes the union will take the staff member directly down to the police station to file a report. Or there's been other cases where I think it's one voice. I mean, they're trying to push that if you throw any type of bodily fluid on someone, you're looking at minimum at least another 5 years in prison. So, there are people trying to make the initiative, but I thought that was a phenomenal video. What's your thoughts on that, Greg?
I absolutely concur. I love your stories, by the way. The one thing I got out of it is, Russ, you need to stop getting hurt so often. Secondly, why is a guy trying to punch you in the face? I put 12 years behind the wall. Nobody ever punched me in the face. But I think it might be different between Kansas and San Quentin, if we want to put that out there. But I think a great example of this, and something that I have talked about in many of my trainings and all during my career, is this is exactly what it's like when you talk about sexual harassment. I can be accused of and fired for sexual harassment against an offender. But an offender cannot be accused of sexual harassment against an officer. So sexual harassment in a corrections facility can be staff against staff or staff against inmate, but it cannot be inmate against staff. It's inherent within our facility that we're going to have insults thrown at us. I mean, I've been called everything but a good-looking white man in my 15 years. You understand what that's like, Russ. So we go through that, and we are forced to put up with it. It is inherent in our job, and it does lead to us being a different breed, a different cat, like the other stories have all led together. And I'm all in, and I'm sure that we need to get some resources, whatever those resources are, to encourage more of this. When an officer is assaulted or attacked inside the walls, they need to have more rights.
Well, that alone, your very ending could be a commercial in itself. And, Greg, you made a good point. PREA is another thing. I mean, PREA is really only to protect the population. The same acts on a female officer, same acts on a male officer, same act on staff would go unnoticed, unfortunately. But vice versa, it becomes a bigger deal. And it's sad. It should be fair both ways. I'm not saying it's right regardless, but the point is that it should be fair both ways. What you do for one side, you should automatically do for the other. But Russ, I really thought that was a powerful video. I had a very strong message on it. It's funny. I got to ask you before we go into mine, why, we've been doing Tier Talk for many years now. I've watched you grow from a boy to a man. And I got to ask you, though, why just now want to say that? Like, I mean, that should have been a story that, you came up with, at the beginning of all this. What was it so passionate about now? Why did it take so long to bring that story up?
Part of it, I think I was just digging deep. And then, those stories are, a handful actually of many dozens of others. And so I don't like to talk so much about, war stories or things that happen unless there can be a moral imperative, a moral takeaway from the story, unless it can be an example of something to do or not to do or how we can get better. I think that I'm much better as a trainer to talk about the philosophy of corrections rather than the times I was, bumping heads with inmates and stuff, because those stories, although they have their place, they tend to be a dime a dozen in this profession. Talking about the things that you've accomplished with regards to, being in the head game, being able to, do gang suppression, contraband interdiction. To me, that's where it's really at. Those other things, I did manage to place myself in the right or wrong place, depending on how you look at it, time after time after time after time. So that is a part of what I do. But just now, I just felt like this was a time to, dig out some of those old stories and brush them off.
Yeah, I thought it was a great story. And also, to comment with Greg, too, I think some of the reason why you were attacked a lot, too, is because, and all jokes aside, by the way, even though Greg's joke was pretty funny, because I've never been attacked either, to be honest with you, but I'm also short. If they swing for my head, they're going to miss because I'm like 5 foot nothing. Yeah, it's just right over my head. But the thing is, you were always on point with discovery and contraband. You were a real threat to the population. I mean, you were a sergeant that were professional. You held your officers to high standards. You found a lot of shit. So the thing is, I think that the population also saw you as a threat because you did your job and you had an unshakable foundation. So some have respect for that, but for the most part, if someone has to have a business done and you become a deterrent, then unfortunately, they're going to have to try their best to make an example or else they get disciplined. So, you had a tough place. San Quentin's no joke, so.
Well, I'll tell you what, San Quentin was quite the zoo, and it was a great learning experience. When I got next to my next one at Sierra, that was an equal learning experience, though. Even though it was a little bit lower level, that's really where I honed my skills at being able to interdict things and stuff, because, it was just that thing where, I always wanted to learn more. And I always had my hand raised if a supervisor wanted to call on me, because I knew that was the only way I could learn is if I kept my hand raised all the time.
Well, you know what I would like to do, and maybe when this coronavirus thing is done, maybe with the help of Guardian, we could, get to one of these facilities and we could do a video on cell searching. I would love to do that. I have access to an empty facility, by the way. A good friend of mine, I won't put his name out there, said if I ever needed to shoot some videos, we can. But I think that would be a very good video that would eventually get views. Now we have mine. Okay, so now here's the funny thing. Now, if this was like a WrestleMania or if this was a boxing match, at the end you got the heavyweight champion. It's usually the best bout, but in YouTube, there's not a good attention span. So usually the videos towards the end don't get watched. So I wanted to make So I wanted to make sure yours gets seen first, and then mine maybe we'll check out what this guy has to say months down the line. But for my video, I thought this was very unique. I interview a young lady named Cody Cook. She's part of a show called the Law Enforcement Roundtable. Both of our shows were recognized on Police One for top channels in law enforcement, which is great because even though my channel is correctional related, Police One did take a notation that there's a lot of stuff from these videos that police officers can learn as well. So I've been following LEO Roundtable for a while. I think if you guys have a chance, please subscribe to it. They have about like 7,500 subscribers, maybe a little more. Very good dialogue, very fun. I also like what they do. They have this hour-and-a-half dialogue, and then after they play the whole live dialogue, then throughout the rest of the week, they cut the video down in segments, and then they release it for people that want to watch the longer one or the shorter versions in piecemeal. So last week, they did coverage on retirement. Actually, they're doing a lot of stuff now on retirement. And one of the things they talked about is when you go through when you have to go through early retirement because you're, let's say you're medicaled out, how that could affect an individual and how the department treats them. Like it feels like they're just forgotten. And I think that's a topic we've never discussed before. So basically what happens when you're forced out early, but this was your passion? Is there a follow-up? Is there a way to kind of ensure that this person's okay, or maybe a way to remind them of their work? So this was a great interview I had with Cody Cook. So I'm going to just put my headset on, my daughter's headset. Again, the video's still serious. Disregard the headset. It's the only thing I have right now that's closest to me. Okay, so hold on. I'm going to play my video. All right, guys. So this is my story. I'm excited. Right in front of me is Cody Ann Cook. How I know of Cody Ann Cook is because I'm a big fan of a YouTube channel that they have called LEO Roundtable. Just a bunch of people discussing current events in law enforcement, kind of similar to what we do here on Tier Talk. And I kind of had a really good relationship with what they do. And obviously seeing their panel of experts, I remember reaching out to Cody, and then Cody was more than willing to kind of cross over into the corrections realm, meet our audience, and just give her input on what she feels in regards to law enforcement, because she does agree that corrections is part of the law enforcement family. So I'm going to have her introduce herself to you first, and then we'll go with my story. So Cody, you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me on board. I appreciate it. And the Leo Roundtable, we'd love you also join us on there as well. The host for that is Chip DeBlock, and we do that every Monday night live on YouTube. A little bit about myself. So I'm a former police officer. I retired in December of 2018 after having an injury and actually being forced to retire due to my injuries. I did multiple things in law enforcement. I did undercover narcotics off and on for 10 years. I worked navigational patrol. I worked in a courthouse. I've done a little bit of corrections work, federal prisoner transports, and then also road patrol. So that's my background in law enforcement, and I started in 1994. I left a few times because of illness and injury and was able to come back, but this last time was the last straw that prevented me from going back again, and so I had to retire. I also became a International Critical Incident Stress Foundation certified instructor, and worked with many people who are dealing with PTSD from first responders across the board, whether it's corrections, law enforcement, EMS, firefighters.
Wow, so there's a lot that we could actually look forward to for future shows, obviously. So we were discussing what we would like to talk about. So one of the things we were discussing was being a female in law enforcement, which we thought was going to be great. But we actually want to push that aside just for a second, because during the roundtable discussion, and it sucks because I'm a talker and having to keep this within 15 minutes, and it's crazy because it's my rule. You guys mentioned something really good about those that are forced out. Now, you were someone that went through that situation. I believe it was an injury that you mentioned on the show that had to force you into retiring. And I want to talk about basically the mindset for those that don't want to get forced out. And you know what's funny? A little bit of an analogy came to my mind, then I'll forward the show over to you, is I was thinking of someone that loves sports, and all of a sudden they get the deal they want to get, and on their first day on the job, whatever sport team they're playing for, they get injured, and now their career is done. So I'm thinking about someone that's devoted to law enforcement. Most people that become police officers or corrections, they're motivated to do it for the right reasons. And this could be a goal of theirs, whether their family did it or whether it's something they always wanted to do. And then all of a sudden they get an injury, it's career ending. How do they now adapt to a life where now they can't pursue that dream? So I thought maybe you could share something personal with us. And then I think my audience this is a question we never asked before. So
I think it's an interesting question to contemplate, and the answer from every person will be a little bit different. I think from my perspective, one of the things that I realize is that I think most of us in law enforcement and corrections immerse ourselves so much in our job. It's such an intrinsic part of us. We become so much entrenched in doing the job that it eventually starts to curb your personality. Your personality becomes that police officer, it becomes that corrections officer. You're always watching and keeping an eye behind your back. You're checking people's hands. You're watching their feet. You're seeing what their eye movements are. What are they doing? Their body language. So it really starts to affect your personal life in a lot of ways. Whether it's at home with your family or being out on the streets, going to a restaurant, everything you do, there's a part of that career that plays into your personality and how you react within society. And so while you're on the job, that of course makes sense, and it blends in with your everyday lifestyle. When you get to the point where you're forced to retire, or you resign or retire for, because you've done your time, your 20, 25 years, 30 years, whatever it may be, I think when you walk away from it, you're still left with that personality, and also the addiction to adrenaline that you get. We all know it. When you have a response to certain critical incidents and things that are going on, your adrenaline dumps and you think a certain way and you respond a certain way. So to walk away from that, you're left with, how do I live in society and in my life now without needing that response? Part of it's going to stay with you for life. It's never going to leave you, but it's definitely a change in your thought process. And I think a lot of people start to feel that they've lost their identity. They don't necessarily think that out loud. They're not going to say that, but it's part of their thought process because it's been so much of their life that now they're left with, what do I do now? Who am I? Where am I going? You know, how do I function outside of my brotherhood and sisterhood that I'm used to being around, and the people who understand what I go through every day, because now I'm out here with a bunch of people who have no idea what I'm like and what I've been through.
And you know what's great? In the show that you had on LEO Roundtable, and guys, if you wait to the end of this, I'm going to show you a picture of the YouTube channel. Make sure you guys get a chance to check out the channel and subscribe. You mentioned losing your identity, and I think it was Brett Bartlett, and then you obviously complimented what he said in regards to having a follow-up with these officers that are being forced out.
But for those young guys that aren't ready, I can't even imagine. It's going to be a terrible thing. And then I imagine the department does not provide them with any kind of follow-up mental health.
Don't just forget about them. And you guys had mentioned that you feel that's the case, that if someone's getting forced out, they're forgotten. And what do you think the department can do to remind them that you're not forgotten?
I think, you know, giving somebody who's done a good job and leaves in good standing a retirement party or a retirement badge or, you know, some kind of letter of commendation for the service that they've given. You know, obviously I'm not talking about somebody who's been forced out because they did something illegal or, you know, they screwed up on the job. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people that might have to leave early because of injury or illness or circumstance, or somebody who's done their time even. Everybody wants to be appreciated for the effort and the service that they've given. It's very difficult, I think, for the people still on the job to bear that in mind once somebody leaves, because they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, and they're focusing on the people that they work with and the job that's before them and all the current circumstances they get immersed in. So I think as far as administration and other officers, fellow law enforcement that we work with, or fellow corrections, that it's important to give the person a send-off that makes them know what they did matters. And even following up, like Brett Bartlett had said on our show, looking at providing counseling for somebody. That's a bad word in our profession, but being somebody who deals with people with post-traumatic stress disorder is an important word. It needs to be part of the modern day conversation for law enforcement professionals. You know, yes, we take on a lot of trauma, and you guys do in the jail, we do on the street. And you need to have outlets for that and learn coping mechanisms to help you deal with that out in society when you're no longer part of a group of people that you can share that with.
Yeah, and I felt, you know, I've been watching LEO Roundtable for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got tuned into it through Police One. And I noticed that there are certain topics that you get personally involved with. Yes, definitely some when there's any form of disrespect to female law enforcement. But I also felt that you were personally involved in this because you went through it. And I think what's good about it, if you're able to share a little bit about it, you know, about your personal story and then why you feel at this point that this is important, because you've been through this, right? Did you feel that once you were forced out that you were forgotten?
Yeah, I could definitely say I did to an extent. For me, with my experience, I had left law enforcement prior. I left law enforcement in 2008 for a multitude of reasons, one of them being that I was sick and required a bunch of surgery. The second one being that I filed a federal lawsuit against my former employer, and that was a huge part of what my decision was to leave that agency. Eventually, I got better. I'd gotten through my illnesses, and I decided to go back, which required me to go through another academy and took a lot of effort on my part. And to get through that academy and get back on the job was a tremendous feat for me. You know, it's a big accomplishment, and I had a lot of pride in my job. I loved being a police officer. I loved working in the small community that I worked in. And so when I left because I got injured, it was kind of like a big kick in the teeth. I had planned on putting in another 5 to 7 years. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. I'd already put in about 4 years, going into my 5th year. And I had what we call an OIC, officer in charge. We didn't have a police chief currently at the PD I was leaving. And that OIC said to me when I went in to turn my letter of resignation, and I was trying to literally keep myself together, and I submitted that. And we had a conversation, and he said to me I wasn't getting a retirement badge or going, you know, a party or anything like that. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, well, why is that? And he goes, well, you haven't worked here 20 years. Well, no shit, Sherlock. I'm leaving not by my choice. I've worked here. I've left here in good standing. I've done a good job. I've had a great rapport with the DA's office. I've had, you know, done good casework. I've worked my tail off of this place, but I get sent off like with my tail between my legs because I'm not putting in 20 years in this one agency. I mean, I've been working in law enforcement off and on since 1994. I felt like that was really disrespectful to my career. And I think I had put in enough effort and done a good enough job that the least they could have done is shown some appreciation. I never so much as even got a thank you. Looking at that from my personal experience in retrospect, I think that when administrators play that way and show their ranks, that's what they think of them. It really does a lot to the morale. And that comes out somehow, somewhere, other than just the person who's getting forced to retire. You know, people sense that on the ground level. They sense that when they are not appreciated. And this can be a very thankless job. If you're in this job to be thanked, you're in the wrong job. I'm sure all of you in corrections feel that. I'm not saying that everybody needs to be thanked all the time and praised, but it is nice to be appreciated, especially when you are doing a good job.
Cool. Let me ask one more question because we're down to about 4 minutes. This is unique of me because I don't usually run on a time limit. I know you guys have a time limit, so you're probably used to this, but I don't have a time limit. But we talked about it from how the upper management views retirees that may be going out early because they're sick, maybe PTSD or whatnot. But how about your peers? How about those that you work next to? Is this, you know, how do they view people that need to retire early? Is that something that is also a concern?
I think it's different across the board depending on the agency that you work for. The first agency that I resigned from in 2008 definitely had no appreciation for me, A, because I filed the lawsuit, B, you know, they probably were just as glad to see me walk out the door as I was to leave there. My last agency that I left, I do have certain people that I work with that I still keep in contact regularly, some of them weekly, and I, you know, felt that appreciation from them. And I think that's important. If you are doing a good job and you build staff rapport and relationships with your coworkers, that's excellent. I also think it's important to keep relationships that are outside of work as well, so that if you are at the point where you're forced out, you still have a social circle and a support network that isn't just based on your job. And that's hard to do.
And I think this was a great topic. I think it's going to hit home because either way, it puts the question out there. I didn't even know this question existed until I saw it on LEO Roundtable. I know you guys are going to be doing some segments for the rest of the year about retirement. And that's actually a very confusing moment for a lot of people because a lot of people figure, well, if I retire, you know, even though they may look towards that day, when the day finally comes, they start to wonder, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And that's part of the reason why I opened up a venue like this, because, you know, you could still have that experience and we don't lose that experience. Now, before we come to a close, I just want to show the channel. I have it on screen content, so bear with me, guys. This is the LEO Roundtable channel. It could be found on YouTube. So let me just show you the channel. That's the channel, LEO Roundtable. I believe they do a live show every Monday night, and then what they do is they cut out the segments and kind of distribute it throughout the week, piece by piece, because sometimes people can't, you know, watch it for a whole hour and a half. So they're nice enough to break it down by segments, and then you can watch it, I guess, piecemeal. And that's kind of where I met these great professionals, and it was great because we share something in common. We're both on the top law enforcement YouTube channels. They're number 3, and I think I'm number 5, but like Chip the Block says, I don't know if the orders matter, but either way, just being in the top 10 is pretty damn amazing. Okay, so let me get back to Cody.
Yeah, we break up the segments throughout the week so that we can also integrate the videos that we talk about. There's not time to do that on a live show, but if people watch the segments in the week, we put in the news articles, links to them, and also any videos that we're discussing, so that viewership can see that as well.
Yeah, I find the channel very informative, a lot of knowledge being given, a lot of professionals. And I love the fact that it's a diverse panel where they may not all agree, but they're very respectful with each other because they know that each other has experience and a perspective that matters. And we kind of have that too once in a while. So it's just great to have that dialogue where people can watch and kind of see all sides being represented. So, Cody, thank you for coming on. And this is my story, and I'm sure we're going to have another one coming up where we're going to talk about being a female in law enforcement. And then maybe one day we'll share a little bit about your stories. I know you have a lot to offer, a lot to share, and I think my audience can really relate to your personal story. So it'd be great to kind of express some vulnerability, but in the process, they can learn a lot. So, all right, guys, this is my story. Bye, Cody. Hope you liked it.
Thanks.
All right, so that's ours. We're coming close to end, but I thought that was a unique topic, something that we never really discussed before. And I I like what she mentioned. I'll go with Greg first and then Russ, but she did mention that, the longer you're at the job, part of your personality starts to change. You start to relate to that job. Now, matter all of a sudden something happens and you lose the job, you lose a big chunk of that identity that you relate with, and that's gotta be hard.
Well, I think that has a lot to do. Is kind of what in my video with Jeff Jackson. He was in the military and then he was in corrections for 11 years. Went to the private sector for about 4 months, and he just that draw to go back. He had to go back to it. I know before I got into corrections, I had done a lot of things. I was a manager at Home Depot. I sold cars and I was a postal worker and I was a school teacher. I mean, I did a lot of stuff, and I was pretty outgoing and gregarious, which, you'd think I am that now. But during my time in corrections, I began to learn one true fact about myself, and that's that I hate people. And I think Russ and Tony, you would agree with me, but the brothers and sisters that I have behind the walls with me, I'll do anything for them. I love those people. They're my family, but I hate people in general because we have seen the worst in humanity. We see the people that just can't make it in society, and it changes who we are. We don't trust people anymore. We do sit with our back to the walls in restaurants. We don't go to crowded restaurants or theaters. I mean, even before all this pandemic, corrections officers are like, yeah, this is my normal life. I don't like to go to crowded places. So it absolutely changes who we are, and it twists and turns, and it intertwines ourselves. We don't normally want to be who we are at work, but in this industry, it absolutely changes us.
Yeah, and Russ, I mean, obviously you watching this video, I mean, you've retired, but you've got a chance to complete that career. You got a chance to complete the mission you set out for. I mean, you come from a family of correctional professionals, so I'm sure that was part of the motivation to go in. Now, imagine if you had that dream, had that motivation, and within the first year or two, you get hurt and it's career ending. How would that affect you?
Well, I really thought that Greg was going to point out that could have been me anywhere along the way, considering the number of times I got hurt. But anyway, yeah, it's always one of those things in the back of your mind. You're going through it, and you're trying to stretch out and get across that finish line, that tape at the end of the career, and you never know when something's going to come up. I had a lot of buddies that didn't make it. I had a lot that came close to not making it, because they had some injury or they had some health issue crop up. Stress levels. It's not just about the danger of the inmates. It's about the danger of the environment as a total. And anything can snag you, thankfully I did manage to get through it and get all my years knocked out.
Before we go to close, I just got one more question about my video that I think the audience could get something from here, and I'll ask you guys. I'll start with Russ and Greg, but what do you think the department could do for those that are forced to retire early because of medical or maybe even PTSD? Is there something that we could do that we're not doing, Greg?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with what happens. It's to me, I know she mentioned, getting the badge and having the retirement party. To me, I don't think it's as much that as it has a lot to do with, it's similar years and years ago when I was 14 years old, I lost my father, and people poured over to the house. When I first lost him, the first couple of days, people were bringing over casseroles and cakes and food, and all sorts of family and friends were there, and people were surrounding you. But then a week later and 2 weeks later and 3 weeks later, those people weren't there anymore. I think that's what we really have to do, is there has to be a system or some way to make sure we're still connecting with these people, reaching out to them, maybe having them come back to visit, setting up luncheons where they can come back and hang out. Nobody ever thinks they want to come back to the jail after they retire, but Russ can really speak to this probably more than I can, but you really do. You miss that camaraderie. So it's not just about, to me, it's not about the banquet and the badge. It's more about, what do we do for them in the months and years afterwards? How do we still continue to keep them part of our family so that they still know, hey, we know you've left, but your experience and the memories we have with you, we still miss you and we still want to be in your life.
I'll tell you one thing where I work, and not going too specific, but I work at a facility where, you originally have to hire from the community first. That was the deal that they made with the city before they could put the prison up. You have to work from Newark in order to, at first. I'm sorry, if you want to work inside the prison, you have to come from the city of Newark first. So we have a tight family going in, and you still see that connection. Every time there's a party that our facility throws, you'll see people coming that have been retired for 15, 20 years that still stay connected. They're welcomed, and they still got those crazy nicknames. And I will tell you one thing, though, before we get to Russ. I remember working with a gentleman when I worked at a very older facility. It was in the movie Lockup, you know, with Sylvester Stallone. I could say it's East Jersey State Prison. I'm not saying anything really specific here. But I worked with an older gentleman who I thought was phenomenal. Started in 1974. He started corrections. And he was still actively in corrections when I got to this facility in 2011. So he had, this guy had a lot of time in as an officer. He also started very young. So I noticed something that I just kind of took in, was that the longer this person was in, a lot of the staff really were newer, and they didn't really know who this person was. They knew who he became because they worked with him more recent, but they didn't know his history. They didn't know his stories. But you know who knew who this person was? Those lifers. So he had a connection, not dirty. This guy was a stand-up dude, don't get me wrong. He was a stand-up dude, someone I would work for any day of the week. But he had a connection with the older population because they shared a lot of similarities in regards to the time, which was different, obviously, as opposed to it is today. Plus, they knew him. They could share stories on histories that we were so far removed from because, you know, we came in, you know, a lot later. And I noticed that connection does matter. Like that connection does matter because it's a piece of yourself. And, you know, having someone to share that with kind of brings a little bit of joy. But again, this officer, he was my supervisor, was a phenomenal supervisor. But I think the reason why he stayed, because it wasn't for the money. It wasn't. The reason why he stayed is he said, Gangi, this is it for me. So when I retire, because I put so much in, I'm afraid of what I'm going to lose. And what do you mean by that? Money? He goes, no, myself, my identity. At this point here, I mean, look at it now. I mean, I'm chatting with the inmates about times past because they're the only ones that know that history. So I kind of share with that. And I think that kind of, you know, made me look into this video a little bit deeper as well. But it made me remember of that lieutenant. Great lieutenant, by the way. But Russ, what's your thoughts on that, Russ?
You know, I would just say, you know, if we want to really promote camaraderie, if you're a supervisor, a manager, an administrator, don't tell your people what a great job and what a great asset they were on their last day. Don't do that. Tell them all along the way. Make sure that they know that they're a part of the team. Make sure that they know that you appreciate the job that they're doing and that they're done. Corrections is so thankless often. You know, you can go out there and bust your butt day after day after day and make all kinds of busts and interdictions, and no one ever says anything. You know, it's time we started saying something. It's time we started recognizing those individuals that are out there and that are really putting in the time, really putting in the effort, and bring those people along so that when they get to the end of their career, it's going to be natural for us and for them to carry on those relationships.
I love it. Now, guys, at the very beginning of this video, before we go to our closing thoughts, we all gave out our emails. If you're interested in maybe being a part of an interview, you can email any one of us to be interviewed. Or if you have a story you want to tell, email us, and we'll tell you how to go about and do it. Email any one of us, and then we'll figure out a way where we can go ahead and get that story out there. And I would love to do this again. It's not about the views. It's about the fact that I actually had fun doing this. Different topics, diverse topics. Just a lot you could take from one episode. And I'm sure you guys had fun doing it. And I'm hoping that we could do this again in 2 more weeks. So I'm going to already have another story in mind. And I think this is just a break away from, you know, what we have going out there, just to try to keep topics going. Yes, we touched on a part of the coronavirus, but there's still so much more about corrections outside of that I don't want to forget the, sincerity of this channel, which is really about, the overall picture. And I think that's what we're trying to bring in. And great new topics were introduced today, like, what Russ brought in today, what I brought in. And then it's great to meet new people, which is what Greg brought, what William brought. So, I mean, there's so many good things that are coming out from doing this. And I'm sure for the people that are being interviewed, they're going to have an impact that they wouldn't have before, talking to people that they would have never talked to before. And someone had mentioned to me again, when you have videos that only have 100 views, because some of them do, and some of them get thousands of views. But how does that make you feel? I said, I've just imagined being in a room with 100 people. That's not bad. Being in a room with 150 people, that's not bad. So it is what it is. But the key here is the information's out there. If you want to get it, it's yours. If you don't want it, not a problem. There's other videos that you can watch. But I think at this point, I feel that we give back because we put stuff up there. It's up to you to take it. Hey, Greg, you have anything in closing?
I do. The more I interact with you guys, Connie, Lewis, the whole gang, the more it makes me realize that the things that I've been preaching, and very recently in my classes about, I've already said it. Hey, get your team home safe. It's not just about getting your team home safe at the end of shift. Yes, that's important. Get everybody out the door. Make sure you do a parking lot. Make sure everybody good. You have a good shift and chop it up a little bit. But I'm talking about getting your team home safe at the end of their career, at the end of their life. And that means you've got to reach out to each other. One thing we're not great at in corrections is telling each other, hey, I care about your brother. I worry about your brother. Yeah, we'll dap each other and give each other a high five and whatnot, but really caring about what's going on. So it really feels good to me to know that anybody out there who's watching right now, I don't care if this is the first time you've turned on Tier Talk or you're a longtime subscriber. If you're feeling like, I don't know if I can take it another day, the stress I'm under, the pains that I'm going through, I guarantee you, if Gangi put up his phone number right now, he'd take your phone call right now, any time of day. Russ would do the same thing, and I would do the same thing. Every class that I've ever taught, every single class, I give them my personal phone number. Why? Because you know what? At 3 o'clock in the morning, if you feel like this career is killing me, I would rather you call me than do something that would hurt your family long term and your friends, because we really do care. So don't lose hope. Yes, it's a thankless job. Russ is 100% right. Yes, there's a lot of pain and suffering in what we do, but there are people out there who care about you. So do not lose hope. If there's anything we can do, Russ, Tony, myself, Connie, there's a bunch of us out there who will do anything we can for you.
Yeah, very powerful, Greg. I appreciate that. And Connie will be back on shortly. She had a bit of an emergency, but trust and believe she's still texting us from a distance. She'll still dedicated to the mission. Before we go to Russ, I want to mention something. So I get messages a lot. So I just want to read something off real quick. Hi, I'm new to corrections. I just got this earlier today. It comes out of Ohio. I'm new to corrections. Just finished up the academy and start on the job training Monday. I want to thank you for your talk show because I've learned more from your show than I did at the academy. I think I'm going into corrections with a much better idea because of your talk. So thank you. And that's it. So can I tell you something? I'm lucky to get a lot of these. Me and Russ do get a lot of these. We do respond back to everyone. As you could tell, I catch everyone. But here's the cool thing. It's not about how many. Even if this was the only person, it's one person. That one person could have an effect on so many exponentially. So the point is, that's what matters. It's not the quantity of the moment, it's the quality of the moment. And that's pretty cool because that motivates us to make more videos. Hey, Russ, anything in closing? Russ, how does that make you feel, Russ?
You know what? I just love being a part of the team here. I love being able to do what I do, both on Tier Talk and on Keepers of Chaos on Facebook. And, it's my mission in life to help out corrections professionals. That's what I do. That's what I identify as now. And so, I'm always willing to, give it my best shot. If I don't know the answer to something or I don't feel like I'm the best expert, I'll point them in the right direction. But you know what? I think that this is the way that we make a real difference, by touching individual lives and having them spread that out over the span of an entire career where they were better rooted, better suited, and better ready to take on the correctional world.
Yeah, that's powerful too. You know, it's funny, just in my closing is you never realize the impact you have. I mean, I'm humble with it. So sometimes I'll be, you know, somewhere, someone will recognize it. I mean, I do wear the hat. Sometimes I forget I wear the hat. And I got hats. I'll definitely send you guys some. I got to do that. I'll send it over maybe by next week. I have more hats. I got to send you guys some. But sometimes you'll get recognized and someone want to take a picture with you and you forget that I'm doing this. I'm like, well, where do I know you from? What you know, what you, and we're going back and forth. And the guy goes, dude, I watch your show. I was like, oh, that's right. I got that YouTube channel. You know, because you know what it is you're so dead. I know this may sound crazy, guys, but when you get so dedicated to the mission, it's not about the channel. It's about the message. I mean, even when I did the national shows, I never name drop. I just go right into respecting the profession. Same thing as you guys do, because that's the mission. Everything else is secondary. And someone asked me a question that really made me think, and I'm going to devote a show on this. Someone I admire, she watches our shows, and she said, Gangi, what you're doing right now, do you do it for you or do you do it for the profession? And it took me a while to think of how I want to answer that, because it was labeled as an either or. So either I'm doing it for myself or the profession. But then I started to realize that my love for the profession is basically I'm doing it for the profession because it is for me. You know, so it's connected. It's not two separate thoughts. But I do it for the profession because I've become so intertwined with the profession. So just a great question to ask, something maybe we could explore later on. But as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe.